So, part of this channel and everything that I had garnered from reading Tom Berg eventually bubbled to a head, most especially during the pandemic, and just as a way to have an outlet to get my uh, since things were locked down and everything. That's when I decided to start this channel. Of course, this is I think about 2 years into the pandemic, because it's been 4 years that I've been doing this channel now. I began it in 2022. So yeah, so we're about halfway through the pandemic when I started this channel. And since then, I have had this incredible experience that I'm going to share with everyone today. Now, first and foremost, one thing that needs to be understood by everybody who's watching is in healthcare in the United States. I can't speak for any other country, but in the United States, we have a law called the Health Information Privacy Protection Act. It's also known as HIPAA. And the basic idea is that patients have a right to their medical records and data being private, and that there needs to be a regulated chain of custody of the information between practitioners and providers. In this way, patients are protected from any potential fraud, or any abuse of their health information. Some people even today still really dislike this particular law, and at the time there were a bunch of actually really funny political cartoons in all the major newspapers that actually kind of poked fun at both sides of the debate before it was put to a vote in Congress. But it was passed, and so now, if you work in healthcare, you are required to be very stingy with who you give a patient's health information to. So because of this, even though the party involved, the patient involved, has now passed away, I'm still not going to be very candid about their identity and the identity of their families and the identity of those with whom I work or who I work for, just to protect everybody's privacy. I did make an attempt to locate the contact information post facto of the family members, to try to inquire of them if they would be okay with me sharing details. Sadly, I was not able to find the contact information of the family members, but so names will be changed. The names of the geography, the people involved are going to be fudged and changed again to protect privacy. And I won't go into too many details about some of the family dynamics involved, again, out of respect for their privacy, the surviving family's privacy, so that way what is really important for us here is more front and centered as well. So I work in a health and rehabilitation facility. This means that I work on the second floor, and usually on the second floor of these types of facilities, we take care of a mixture. We take care of a mixture of people at various stages in their recovery. Sometimes they don't recover and they end up having to live with us. So it's a mixture of what's called long-term care, or LTC, and skilled care, which is also called SNF. You'll sometimes hear nurses call it SNF. Skilled patients tend to be short-term. They're there for some rehabilitation, or sometimes they'll have like an infection. They'll be receiving some form of antibiotic IV therapy or other type of medical therapy, or they have fractures and they're waiting for their fractures to heal and their strength to be built back up. The rest of them have dementia or Alzheimer's to various degrees, or they are completely alert and oriented and they just unfortunately aren't able to care for themselves safely at home. And so there's a mixture. And every once in a while, they'll send me someone who has a very short life expectancy. These types of patients are often referred to as hospice patients. Hospice is a type of care that's provided in the healthcare field. It's also known as palliative care. So a lot of cancer patients, if they're in their end stages of cancer, will sometimes be on palliative care or hospice care. And so usually with the goal of hospice patients, the goal is comfort, to provide them reasonable comfort based upon their current condition. And so for some, it means they may not need much in the way of, say, pain management. In others, they may have such excruciating pain that they cannot interact with their family in any meaningful way. And so in those instances, we will provide for them medications that will assist them in pain management so that they can have more meaningful interaction with their family. It can happen sometimes that someone who reaches a certain point in their end of life, that they will have so much pain and discomfort that it prevents them from being at rest for their final moments. And so sometimes in those situations, the hospice provider will prescribe a certain medication regimen to help reduce their respirations. And the reason that they do this is because when some people who are in their last moments, within sometimes people can be in that state for a month. I've taken care of hospice patients who have been a month in the sort of comatose stage, but with the high respirations and other visual indicators that they are in agony of some kind or another. But it can also they can also last for maybe only a few days. So I've seen a wide spectrum of the very end. And so their respirations can get up into the 30s or higher. And there's medication that we give in those situations to help bring their respiration rate down, which helps to calm the heart, because the heart's also going a million miles an hour in those instances. And sometimes that's enough to bring them out of their comatose state, to have what's sometimes called the surge, which is this day or two of pure of normal cognition. Um, so there's all kinds of things that can happen during end of life care. Our story involves the end of life care provided to someone that I'm gonna name them. Gosh, I need to pick a name of someone who I'm not currently caring for. We'll call him Jerry. I don't have anybody I take care of who's named Jerry, so we'll call him Jerry. Now Jerry was barely middle-aged, barely. Still quite young. Probably the youngest patient I've ever cared for in my 14 years of geriatric nursing. He came with organ failure, and he was given a prognosis of 2 months. So he had less than 2 months left to live. I won't go too much into the details about exactly what he had going on that caused him to have organ failure or which organ it was. Again, for privacy reasons. So I had been away. I was on my weekend off when they had been admitted. And so my first day caring for this person, one of my CNAs, my nurse's aides, she came asking for my assistance turning and repositioning this person in bed so that they could perform care. So we go in. I introduce myself, and I help them turn on their side, and they look over and they see this hanging around my neck. Now, most of the facilities I've worked in, I've had very few patients who are Catholic. Most of the people I've taken care of have been anywhere between atheist to Protestant. Very few have been Catholic, and of the patients I've had who were Catholic, they either no longer necessarily believed, but it was hard to say whether they had officially apostatized, or if they were just lapsing for a time, all the way to they used to go to church, but they hadn't been to church in years, and they didn't have any priests to come and visit them and bring them the sacraments. So, and this Mr. Jerry, given that I live in Jerry Falwell land, the mecca of non-denominational Pentecostal evangelical Christianity. There are 2 Catholic parishes, and one is a charismatic parish, and the other the priest collar. So Catholicism is on very thin ice here in this town. So, um, so I didn't have any. I had my anticipation was that he was just probably another either agnostic, atheist, or Protestant non-denom. So I helped turn him on his side for care, and he looks at my medal, and he goes, "Is that a miraculous medal?" Um, Most of the time in my 14 years of nursing, when someone asks me what it is, they ask me, "What is that?" They don't ask, "Is that the miraculous medal?" Because most people don't know what it is who aren't raised Catholic, let alone Orthodox. I'd imagine most Orthodox probably have an idea what it is. I've even seen some YouTubers who are Orthodox that wear this, which begs a lot of questions that they won't answer in the comment sections of their videos when I ask it. And so I was taken aback. I was quite shocked that he identified it by name and was asking um, a clarification if indeed that's what it was. They probably had never seen one this large, so they probably just were making sure that's what it was. But I was flabbergasted that he knew what it was by name. And so I said, yeah. And I asked, are you Catholic? And he kind of he giggled, and with a little sly smile on his face, he said, "Well, you could say I'm half Catholic, 50% Catholic." And so we finished up what we were doing, and I said, and I told him, "Well, when I have some downtime, I'll be back because I have some questions." And he laughed and he said, "Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I always like having someone to talk to." It's like, "All right, cool. I'll see you later on." So I go about the rest of my to do the rest of my duties, and so I get a little bit of downtime in the afternoon after med pass to go in and to inquire further. And so over a period of a few days, I got to learn, I got to know more about Jerry. I got to learn about his personal history and everything that's kind of led to that moment. And so he shared, and this will probably be there's at least two pertinent details that are relevant for the remainder of the story, but everything else is going to be kept off the lips, again for privacy purposes. Um, so what I can say is, when they turned 40, Jerry when he turned 40, Jerry had a very traumatic event occur where um, his wife just up left, abandoned him, no note, no explanation, no nothing, and left for and became an adulteress. And the second pertinent detail is that in his attempt to cope with his newfound situation, he had turned to alcoholism, which he tried to um, which he tried to kick the habit of on his own without support, cold turkey, a number of times. And so that probably led to, there's a lot of trauma that can occur to your internal organs when you go hard enough and then cut cold turkey. So, it doesn't have to be alcohol; it could be anything. But that cold turkey quitting can really wreak internal damage depending on the substance involved, and alcohol is one of those. Um, so that probably explains why why he was left with 2 months to live. So um, now during this time that he was on and off of the drink, he um, he prefaced it by saying, "Please don't, please." Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So I asked him what he meant by half Catholic. What do you mean by half Catholic? And so I asked him to, like, was your mom Catholic and your dad not, or vice versa? So like, what does it mean? He's like, so he said, no, no, I was raised Pentecostal, both parents, and I could always tell that there just wasn't something right about it. Could never put my hand on it, but and so like eventually I just stopped going to church, and I still believed in God, and I still believed in Jesus, but like there was just something about it that something about the Pentecostal charismatic stuff that I just couldn't get on board with. Um, and from there he he managed to come across some of the videos on YouTube from Father Chad Ripperger. I know for some he's rather controversial. Um, is most especially post consecrations, post the July 1st consecrations, by saying that there's no crisis in the church, and it's like, um, uh, just as a side note, please pray for Father Ripperger that his current position on there not being a crisis in the church stance doesn't negatively affect um, his exorcism ministry, um, because he ought to he should know better. He should know better than to turn a blind eye to everything that's going on. So please pray for Father Chad Ripperger, that he may be protected from his current held erroneous opinion, that it does not tend towards the detriment of his ministry as an exorcist, and that his patients may still be delivered despite it. Anyhow, Jerry had watched some of his videos and started to look into Catholicism. And he said over time he started to realize that yeah, I think this is it. I think this explains why I couldn't stay committed to the Pentecostal thing, because there was clearly something wrong with it, and I just have never been able to find a priest that was um, willing to help me. He said he had attended some of the local one of he attended the local parishes in the area and was left feeling like it was no different than than what he had been raised in. So so he felt like he was in exile, a very strange exile where he has a desire to become a member of Catholicism, but still has questions about it and doesn't have anybody who's willing to teach him. So I thought that this was somewhat providential, that but I had no idea exactly how providential it would be until later. So by the end of my 2 day my 2 day stretch on my schedule, I asked, we would have he would ask me questions, and I would tell him what I knew to the extent, and I would make sure to tell him, it's like, look, like I can tell you, I can try to answer your questions to the best of my ability, and but if we get to a question where I may not know the answer 100%, um, I'd have to I'd have to defer you to someone who would know. And so I asked him if he would be interested in speaking to a priest. I told him because I happen to know a few, and where I go to church with my family, they happen to all be professors of logic, of theology, moral theology, systematic theology, Thomistic theology, Latin, right? So traditional stuff, and they know their stuff. Um, so I asked Jerry if he would be open, if he would, with his permission, I would be happy to reach out to the chaplain of the parish to see if we could organize someone to visit with him to answer any of his other questions. And I did make sure to tell him that, if you would like me to do that, please let me know, but know that, in doing so, it would, like, do you have do you feel that you have, like, do you have a desire to be baptized? And he said, yeah. He told me that he wanted to be, like, he told me he wanted to be Catholic, but he still had questions, and he wanted to make sure that he had the answers to his remaining questions. And he brought up, how it's like, uh, I think, if I can recall, one of the things he said to me was, "I'm not sure, yeah, I'd like to be Catholic, but I don't know that I'm worthy, or that I've lived a life where y'all would want me." And oh, let me tell you, that really, that hit me, because this poor guy has no idea that he has no idea of, like, the depths of Christ's love for us. And so I said to him, just to try to keep the good humor that he had. um I asked, why you say that, Jerry? Have you ever do you know has anyone ever told you about Saint Augustine? Like, do you know about Saint Augustine? He was a total wreck himself, and Saint Ambrose was happy to have him. Um, and so I told him, it's like, whatever you think is going to keep you from it, like, don't let it keep you from peace. If you're looking for peace, and you know that you can find it with Jesus, and if you've come to the point where you think that the Catholic Church is where you're going to have peace with Jesus, then don't ever think that there is no impediment aside from attachment to our sins. And he was like, oh well, he's like, I'm at the point where, like, I'm at the point in my life where there's no, I've already started reaping everything I've sowed. So, um, and he said, in one way, I feel like I've made peace with the fact that I'm gonna be gone soon. Um, but Jerry expressed how he wasn't, where he still had that little shred of doubt, and he expressed a true desire to have that quelled. So he gave me permission to reach out to my parish chaplain. Now, the way that my schedule works is I will have these 3 days off in the middle of the week. And um, sorry. So I'll have these 3 days off in the middle of the week. And I usually spend that time researching for this, for the live stream and for whatever essay I'm writing, and I'll work on essays during that time, do some reading, meditation, rosary, all that stuff. So I was away from work for a period of 3 days, and upon returning, uh, it was a Thursday. It was a Thursday in the end of June. In fact, I think it was the last Thursday in June. I came back, and he was very lethargic, very difficult to arouse, was having a great deal of pain, and spent most of his day sleeping and resting. At some periods, was not even arousable for meals. And so the 3 days that I was off, I had been in correspondence with our chaplain, sort of coordinating, and I tried to let Jerry know that Father was willing to come and visit him. And unfortunately, like I could tell, it was really difficult for him to kind of comprehend. So I was worried that he may not make it. So I reached that it might be getting to the end, and so I reached out to Father to let him know this is his current situation. I don't know how much long he has left. It's up to you, Father, if you still wish to come and see Jerry. And Father Father had not yet replied to me that day. So, and the evening and the morning was the next day. So I come in the next day for my second day in my 2-day stretch. And Jerry was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, alert, oriented times 4, was able to still have deep, interesting, meaningful conversation about high concepts. So I reached back out to Father, and I said, Father, he is awake, he is conscious, he has high cognitive functionality right now. We just had a discussion about a whole bunch of very interesting things. And I said, I think this is what we call the surge. This could be his last good day. So if you are still willing, Father, please do come. And so, he said, I will be there in the afternoon, because he also teaches at the seminary. So after classes were over, he came to visit. Now, while we're waiting for Father to come and visit, what was it? Oh, I brought two books. I gave Jerry 2 books prior to my 3 days off. I brought him a Baltimore Catechism, because Jerry had told me that he didn't finish high school, so his reading comprehension was so-so. So I brought him a Baltimore Catechism. It's pretty simple, question answer format. Um, I told him not to be off put by the illustrations. They are technically intended for children, but they are nevertheless useful in and help to help illustrate certain points. So I gave him that, and I gave him a copy of The Secrets of the Rosary, because during our conversation earlier in the week, um, when I went back in to ask him what he meant by half Catholic, he reached into his hospital gown and he pulled out one of those what are they called? One of a ball chain rosary with a pardon crucifix and Benedict medal for the centerpiece. And so he's like, I've got a rose. Oh, and no, it wasn't a pardon crucifix. It was a reliquary crucifix that had a relic containing mud from the catacombs in Rome. So he knew what the rosary was. He didn't he tried praying it to the best of his ability based on the little bits that he was able to gather with the limited resources he had. He had been in the healthcare system for a very long time, for a number of months, and so he wasn't able to procure for himself materials to help him learn how to really say the rosary. So I brought him a copy of Secrets of the Rosary, because it has a method, a short method and a longer method. And he was able to read some of it before he had his Thursday decline. So we'll do our Christopher Nolan time warp back to his last Friday. So he's alert, oriented, times 4 on Friday. Father is on his way. And so while we're waiting for him, after I had finished some of my duties, I went to take a few minutes to spend some time with him. And I asked him how the early part of his week was. The other staff members had told me that he had had a good week up until the Thursday. So he shared that he was able to read a little bit of Secrets of the Rosary, and then he decided to share with me something a little more intimate that he hadn't told me before. He said to me, he started off by saying to me, "I don't want you to think that I'm crazy when I tell you what I'm about to tell you." And I said to him, "Lucky for you, I'm a man who believes in miracles. So whatever it is, you can throw it at me and I'll catch." So he shared with me that a few years ago, a few years prior to him coming to us, he had seen a woman in white. And he said that, and the way, and this is a direct quote. He said, "She looked like she was shining bright like the sun, but not quite exactly as bright as the sun. Like, she was really shining, but she wasn't shining to where you had to look away." And that on other occasions, he had seen these blue orbs these little blue shining orbs that would hover over his shoulder that he would sometimes catch a glimpse of when he was looking in a mirror. Now, of course, given the history with alcohol, um, you do have to take it with some grain of salt, right? You have to play devil's advocate with the supernatural sometimes, because um, you know we we always have to be careful of being deceived. With that being said, he said that it was because I saw this white lady that I started to look into Mary. I started to go online and research about Mary. So even if even if it was an experience that was induced either by alcohol or by withdrawal from alcohol during his periods of attempted sobriety, um, either way, the fruits and I brought this up. He had told Father, and so I brought it up in my conversation with Father, to just to kind of discern, um, to discern with the help of his judgment on it. And Father said that, regardless, clearly the fruits of it are good, because here we are, right? Here I am, a priest, here to help him, to help minister to his soul. And it's brought, it regardless of its origins, it has brought him the catholic to the Catholic faith, at least, so far intellectually. Now, uh so around 5 in the evening, Father finally arrives, and he texted me to tell me that he was here. And so I rushed down to help escort him up, and he wasn't there. So and there's only one elevator accessible to visitors to get you up to the second floor. So I go back up the elevator, and I go back down the hall, and I don't see him. And so I go to at least let Jerry know that Father's coming. Father's almost here. He just came in the building, and sure enough, there was Father. So I don't know. I don't know if Father was transported or what, because there was only one. There was really only one way, um, unless he wrapped around the other way. But still, if I had only just missed him, like the front desk lady told me, he would have come off of the same elevator I went down on. So I don't know. I don't know. So Father sits in there with Jerry for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and after their conversation, when Father goes to leave, he stops by. Oh, he stops over to me, and he tells me that that he can come and visit next week if he is still here, and that in the event that he is not, in the event that he is not doing well, or that he's declining, or that his time is running short, Father gave me permission to perform a conditional baptism. So with that, I was off. I was off that Saturday, Sunday, and I came back. I came back that Monday, and he was not doing well. Jerry was not doing well. He was very unresponsive. He was still breathing, but he was not. He was not interacting. Had a blank stare. Wasn't tracking my finger or a light or anything. And so I was about to call the hospice nurse, because usually in these situations you defer to the hospice staff that comes to visit. So she made it in shortly after. I was in to assess him. She performs her assessment, and she confirms for me that it probably is getting pretty close to his time. So I made sure that I brought my holy water with me that day, and a prayer book um, that has a small office for the dying, for the dead and the dying. And when once I had received that confirmation, and after the hospice nurse finished with what she was doing, I gave him his conditional baptism, according to the permission granted to me by my chaplain. And then an hour after doing that, my nurse's aide came out, and she came up to me and she whispered and said, um, I think he's gone. So I go in to do now, as a licensed practical nurse in a skilled facility. LPNs are not permitted to pronounce. So all I can do is go in and assess whether or not there is a pulse. Now, um, for those who don't know, there's different what are called code statuses. So if you're a full code, it means that in the event that you go completely unresponsive, that we are to initiate CPR. A DNR is known as a do not resuscitate order, and this is a different code status that will specify in the event of arrest or loss of consciousness or loss of any other signs of life, that it'll stipulate what you can or cannot do. And most of the time, a DNR will say, I do not want to be resuscitated. I do not want CPR. I do not want IVs. But they can be modular. Some of them are flexible. His was a flat do not resuscitate. So and so this also legally covers the medical staff, because otherwise, without a DNR, you are assumed to be full code, and if something happens, then we go into action. So we went in, and he was paler than he was when I had first been in that morning, and very cold. Mottling had set in his lower extremities, and there was no pulse, no radial pulse, no apical pulse, no signs of breathing. So I reached out to the hospice nurse who had just been there. I told her. She said that she would be there as soon as she can to do the pronouncement, and that she would notify the family and the physician. And it's one of the nice things of having hospice is they can do all those things. So one of the things that I noticed while I was assessing him was that he had a tear in his eye. So he was kind of laying in bed, with his head slightly turned, and so he had a tear that had pooled in the corner of his eye. Sorry. Um, I'm trying to keep it together for y'all. But if push comes to shove, I have a box of tissues down here. Um, so after we got him all cleaned up, got him straightened out in bed, I made him presentable, I noticed that father had given him one of these, a smaller one. He gave him one of these that he had around his neck. So I found his rosary and I placed the rosary in his hand, his right hand, and yeah. And then I notified Father, asked him to say a mass for his soul. Yep, here we go. Tissue time. All right, so so that's the story of Jerry.